as Uruguay thrashed Chile's all-white 11 4-0. Despite the win, Argentina's press mocked the two players, with the host nation nicknaming them monkeys. Uruguay won the tournament, with Isabelino Graydon winning the Golden Boot.
And now you know. See, I wanted to make this video to point out the mentality behind the people. The people, the real people, not the people you see in the soccer field. Let me put this to me, bro, because this is ridiculous. Not the people, not Messi you see like doing all this shit. I'm not saying he's whatever. But I wanted to make this video to show you the mentality behind the people that was singing that chant on the bus, and why they were singing it. Because a lot of people are just doing surface level stuff. I made this video to show you the mentality behind and why they think it was okay to do that chant. What's the reason? Why don't they have any black players? Huh?
During the 2018 World Cup, someone messaged me and asked if I knew why the Argentina team had no black players. It was an interesting question, and a fact that had never even occurred to me at the time. The question piqued my interest sufficiently for me to do some research.
Messi, come out and make a statement, man. You're the captain of the team. What's going on, bro? You're the captain of the team. You need to come out and say something. And I'm gonna do another video about Pep too, bro. I feel like Pep, because I'm a soccer fan. I love soccer. I've watched it. I'm a fan of Messi. I'm not saying a fan. I like just Messi play. I like all them boys. I'm not fanned out. You know what I mean? I like to see a play. I like to see a good match. Shout out to them. But I've noticed this from all the Argentina players. I've noticed something's really off about them when they play against certain teams that have certain players. Man, let's keep watching.
Into the matter as Argentina laboured to a 1-1 draw against Iceland in their opening game in Moscow, with Messi having a penalty saved and Javier Mascherano looking like he was running through treacle. I jotted the question down, but thought little of it for the future, since I just made little 5-minute videos orientated around the number 7 at the time. Of course, I still make videos like that, and if they are the only videos of mine that you like, then you are obviously welcome to just watch. Anyone could attempt to discuss football history without referencing those subjects, then today's video isn't for you. Assuming those people are now gone and won't poison the comment section with their complaints given that they received ample warning and exclamatory information, I will proceed. As I say, I thought nothing work-wise of the question at the time, since it was
not even their bench. It's like, come on, bro. It's not like they are in Europe. They're not like even Sweden got like black players, or they should have. It don't matter. Or they're not like they're from Slovakia or like some shit like that. It's like, all right, cool, I get it. It don't really, it's cool, whatever. But you are in like South America, near Brazil, bro. It's funny.
It's not the type of thing I could easily turn into a list of 7, but obviously, the channel has branched out significantly since then. Earlier this week, I was flicking through my old notebooks, as I sometimes do, in the hope of discovering an unrealised gem of an idea, and I came across the question about Argentina and their lack of black footballers. Since issues of race have become so prominent across the globe over the last month, following the murder of George Floyd, I decided to turn the question, which is something of a Pandora's box of race relations and historic discrimination, into a video. Argentina, as I'm sure most of you know, is located here, in the southern half of South America. Argentina is the second largest country in South America by land area, and the third largest in terms of population, bordering Bolivia and Paraguay to the north, Brazil and Uruguay to the east, and sharing a vast border with Chile to the west, which is the third longest land border on. Argentina was also the first country in South America to begin playing football, with the sport arriving via the port of Buenos Aires through European sailors. Argentina was home to South America's first football club, and also the continent's first national team, in 1867 and 1893. Ever since, Argentina have been a force on the international stage, and one of the 3 most successful nations from South America, routinely jostling for major honours alongside Uruguay and Brazil. Black footballers have been at the forefront of Uruguay and Brazil's success on the international stage. Both nations' greatest ever players, Jose Andrade in the case of Uruguay and Pelé in the case of Brazil, have been black, and neither nation have won world football's most prestigious trophy, the World Cup, without a black player in their team. Despite bordering both nations and having had distinctly similar pasts in so many respects, the same cannot be said for Argentina. Argentina's two crowning moments, their two world titles, came in 1978 and 1986, both successes arriving without a single black player, and Argentina's all-time greats, Messi, Maradona, Di Stefano, are all.
I got a question for you. For the folks at
I absolutely hate the
home who don't know about campus yet.
Argentina and their fellow South American footballing powerhouses, and over the course of more than 100 years, it is not one that can be put down to chance or mere coincidence. In terms of the pure footballing facts, it is not quite true, as some seem to believe, that Argentina have never had a black international. They have had one, Alejandro de los Santos, during the 1920s. De los Santos won 5 caps for Argentina between 1922 and 1925, whilst playing as a centre forward.
Bro, they did have one black guy.
Becoming Argentina's first and last black footballer. In the almost exact century since, Argentina have had international.
Listen, fuck that shit. No niggas on this team at all. Which is crazy, bro. A South American team with no black player on their team for like what, the last, I don't know how many years, from 1920s. Dude had 5 caps. You probably didn't even start. You probably didn't even start, bro. You're like, man, enough. We put you on there. You didn't show out.
Nationals with African ancestors, which Argentines tend to call mulattoes, meaning mixed race, although that term is itself now deemed to be offensive. The most famous of Argentina's mixed race players may have been the goalkeeper Hector Bailey, who won the World Cup with Argentina as a backup to Ubaldo Filo in 1978, although he only ever won 13 caps for Argentina himself. Brazil, meanwhile, both currently and historically, have had an abundance of brilliant black players, from Di Gia, Garrincha and Pelé in their first World Cup winning squads to the likes of Marcelo and Willian now. One key reason for the different ethnic groups represented in different national teams is, of course, the different demographics of those countries as a whole. You don't get many black players playing for Estonia, and nor do you tend to get too many white players representing Rwanda. In fact, this almost entirely explains the big difference between the number of black footballers that represent Argentina and Brazil. Only 149,493 people in Argentina identify themselves as being Afro-Argentine, which is just 0.37% of the nation's overall population. Meanwhile,
and we know why. We know why from the last video. From the last video we just watched, right? We know why they don't.
15 million Brazilians, like equivalent to 7.6% of the population, identify themselves as being black, and over 50% of Brazilians now identify as being black or mixed race. You may be thinking, well, that's that cleared up then. That was a short video with an easy explanation. But I'm afraid we can't just leave it at that. Whilst the overall demographics do explain the discrepancies in the makeup of Argentina's national football team, it does not explain the reason for such vastly different demographics in the first place. Whilst Argentina, like all nations, does have some unique and distinguishing features, its history is largely typical of a European colony in the Americas. Yep. Europeans arrived, they looked to enslave the indigenous population but ended up wiping them out through epidemics and infectious diseases.
Yep. Come to the Americas, spread their diseases, take over, and act like they discovered the whole place. Like, come on, man. You did not act like you just discovered some shit that never existed, ever. Cut it out. That shit was already there.
And instead had to import slaves from sub-Saharan Africa. The first slaves arrived in Argentina via the Rio de la Plata in 1587, and once Buenos Aires began allowing English slave traders to import slaves via the Argentine capital, Argentina's slave trade boomed. I think it's worth emphasizing the sheer number of slaves that arrived in South America during the years of the Atlantic slave trade. Over 90% of all slaves who were kidnapped and shipped to the Americas ended up in either South America or the Caribbean. Just 6% ended up in North America, and Argentina was among the chief importers. The majority of Afro-Argentine slaves originated from Angola and the Congo, and for almost 100 years, slaves accounted for 70% of the total value of all imports that arrived at the port of Buenos Aires. There are no precise figures definitively showing the number of slaves that were brought to Argentina, or the percentage of the population that they made up, but there is accurate regional statistics. In some provinces, particularly agricultural ones, the slave population was as high as 64%, and even in Buenos Aires, at least 40% of the capital city's population were slaves in 1810. It seems reasonable to assume that at one time, Argentina's slave population was around a third of the nation's overall demographic, thus making Argentina 1/3 black. A nation doesn't just go from being 30 or 40% black to less than 0.5% black, even over.
Exactly. So something had to happen where they tried to exterminate most of the black people that was there. You can't just go from like 13% of blacks to just fucking point some percent. That can't happen, bro. There had to be some plays and something had to happen to where they had a plan put to do what they wanted to do.
For a period of 200 years by accident. What's more, it is a demographic change that didn't really occur gradually over 200 years, but rather one which happened very rapidly within the space of 15 to 20 years.
15 to 20 years. You go from 13% to less than 1%? Come on, bro. This is crazy. And that's why I really like the fact that they on their bus, because a lot of shit cannot keep staying in the closet, right? A lot of shit about a lot of people and not a lot of places are gonna come to light in 2024. And I'm really happy that this is happening so we can really go deep and dig deeper into the history, into the mindset of why they feel like it's okay to do what they did on that team bus. They felt like it was okay to do that because look at the history, bro. They felt like it was okay to do that, but look, because of their history.
According to a number of first-hand accounts, African slaves were treated much better in Argentina than they were in other European colonies like Guyana and in the Caribbean, but the same could not be said for their treatment following the abolition of slavery. Slavery was abolished in Argentina in 1853, but even more so than in other parts of the world, the lives of many Africans and Afro-Argentines in Argentina actually became even worse following abolition. Discrimination was rife, and two significant events either deliberately or inadvertently, depending upon which version of history you choose to believe, wiped out an enormous chunk of Argentina's black and African population. Both largely coincided with the presidency of Domingo Faustino Sarmiento between 1868 and 1874, but the degree
Yeah, that's the same guy in the last video the guy was talking about. That's him.
to which Sarmiento orchestrated the deaths is a topic of great debate. Between 1864 and 1870, a triple alliance made up of Argentina, Uruguay, and Brazil waged a war on Paraguay that would become the bloodiest interstate conflict in the history of Latin America, although the exact number of casualties is unknown. The majority of Argentine and Brazilian troops were previously enslaved Afro-Brazilians and Afro-Argentines who also dominated the front lines, which was virtually a death sentence in such a bloody conflict. Enormous numbers of Afro-Argentines died during the war, with some having suggested that Argentina's black population were deliberately recruited and put in the most high-risk situations in the first stage of a covert genocide upon the population.
Yep.
The high number of male military deaths had further consequences on the next generation of Afro-Argentines, with black women in Argentina either having children with white Argentines or not having children at all. The second great plague among black people in Argentina came as a consequence of the repeated yellow fever outbreaks in Buenos Aires, and particularly the epidemic of 1871. At the height of the 1871 epidemic, Buenos Aires went from recording an average of fewer than 20 daily deaths to seeing more than 500 deaths in a single day. In total, the epidemic killed 8% of the city's population, meanwhile a third of all residents moved in order to escape the scourge. As is always the case, those most severely affected and consequently killed during the epidemic.
And to be honest, like in America, right? The history is people talk about it. But in a lot of these little different places, people don't talk about this shit. And that's why it's gonna keep going on, because you gotta bring light to those type of situation, bro. In 2024, certain places shouldn't be like that. All right, man. In 2024, like our generation needs to be the one to like cut all this bullshit out. All the old ways of thinking, all this. Bro, at the end of the day, we on the same planet. We all human. We eat shit, drink, breathe the same air. So all this divisive shit is not gonna cut it, bro. It's really not gonna cut it.
With those without the financial means to escape the disease's epicenters, and those who were unable to afford health and medical care. Naturally, in Argentina, the poorest segment of the population were those who had only recently been released from their shackles.
This AI tool will take your idea and create a complete book, complete with design, image.
Yet again, in this case, President Sarmiento has been accused of creating breeding grounds among black communities for the disease, essentially forcing Afro-Argentines into environments of squalor in overpopulated and heavily polluted areas with inadequate infrastructure and healthcare. In both
Evil, man. If what they're saying is true, this is pure evil, bro.
of these cases, it's difficult to know Sarmiento's individual influence, but there is no doubt that black people were disproportionately killed, and that racism and discrimination was rife in Argentina at the time, just as it was across much of the globe. As such, it's not hard to believe that Sarmiento and other decision-makers in Argentina were at best ambivalent about the lives of Afro-Argentines, and at worst, actively seeking to wipe them out. From between 30 to 40% of the population having been black Afro-Argentine slaves in 1810, there were so few black people left in Argentina by 1875 that the government didn't even register African descendants in their national consensus. It is rare for even a very deliberate and well-orchestrated genocide to be so successful, for desperate want of a better word, at wiping out a section of society.
Genocide, bro. That nobody talks about. And that's why you don't know who you believe in. God is good. God would always bring light to certain situation. Forever. Bring lights to certain situation. Or people too scared to talk about it because it's a messy history, right? Nah, God gonna bring light to it. Man. God gonna bring light to it, man. People gonna know the truth. People gonna know the horrific history behind the guys that was singing that song or that chant. People gonna know, man. Thank you for letting your true color show, because people know why you think like you do.
Domingos Faustina Sarmiento was certainly a racist, even by contemporary standards it could be claimed, despite his interest in Western liberalism. According to the International Business Times, Sarmiento wrote in his diary in 1848, quote, "In the United States, 4 million are black, and within 20 years, it will be 8. What is to be done with such blacks, hated by the white race? Slavery is a parasite that the vegetation of English colonization has left attached to the leafy tree of freedom." End quote. That quote seems rather chilling amidst accusations of a covert genocide. There are other reasons for the reduction in Argentina's black population, including the willful migration of a number of Afro-Argentines to neighbouring nations who they felt would be more hospitable towards them, and also the vast arrival of white Europeans over the following century that further diluted the black population. Today, 97% of Argentines identify as being white, making Argentina the whitest nation in Latin America. In truth, there is likely to be far more African blood in Argentina than many Argentines like to admit, since historically, blackness was considered a negative trait. The word negro, for example, which just translates as black, was...
Look at this. Look at this. Look at this. Say no to racism. Hypocrites. Hypocrites.
once used as a term to describe Argentina's black population, but has now become so distorted as to include anyone who is considered to be of lower class, lower income, or lower intelligence, almost like the term redneck in America. It's that kind of ingrained racism which is alive and well in Argentina, and much of the world. In 1996, 150 years on from the near annihilation of Argentina's black population, President Carlos Menem said during a diplomatic trip to the United States that, quote, "Black people do not exist in Argentina. Brazil has that problem," close quote. When the leader of your
What a piece of shit, bro.
nation describes a mass segment of society as a problem based purely upon the colour and pigmentation of their skin, you still have a problem with racism. So next time you are watching La Albi Celeste, who so often set major tournaments alight and have given the world some of the greatest footballers of all time, and you wonder why there are no black players, well now you know, or as much as we can know, from a nation that has long tried to blur the lines and whitewash its black history. I will leave you with this. In 1916, in the very first Copa America, or the South American Championship as it was known at the time, Uruguay picked two black players for their squad to travel to Argentina, Juan Delgado and Isabelino Graydon. Uruguay's first opponents, Chile, objected to the inclusion of what they called, quote, slaves and Africans at the tournament before the two teams met in Buenos Aires, despite the fact Chile had legally abolished slavery more than 100 years earlier. In that match, Isabelino Graydon scored twice as Uruguay thrashed Chile's all-white 11 4-0. Despite the win, Argentina's press mocked the two players, with the host nation nicknaming them monkeys. Uruguay won the tournament, with Isabelino Graydon winning the Golden Boot. That's it for today's...
And let me go back. And now you know. See, I wanted to make this video to point out the mentality behind the people. The people, the real people, not the people you see in the soccer field. Jordan, let me put this to me, bro, because this is ridiculous. Not the people, not Messi you see like doing all this shit. I'm not saying he's whatever. But I wanted to make this video to show you the mentality behind the people. that was singing that chant on the bus and why they were singing it. Because a lot of people are just doing surface level stuff. I made this video to show you the mentality behind and why they think it was okay to do that chant. And why Enzo Fernandez did that sorry behind apology. This is why, bro. And this is why. And I'm going to leave it at that. Appreciate you guys. Leave a comment, like, and subscribe, bro, for more fire content.